So I'm here with Sam Clarke. I've managed to drag him out of a Tesla and we're testing the Mustang Mach E. I mean, lots of you know Sam as the Chief Vehicle Officer at Gridserve. I also know him as my fellow Guinness World Record holder in an electric van. So I thought I'd ask Sam a few questions just on the state of charging and just sort of almost like a carpool thing where Sam's answers some questions. So first question for you, Sam, how did you get into the world of EVs and vehicle charging?
Well, Kev, that was a long time ago. So as far as the EVs was over 23 years ago now, when I was in China looking for new business opportunities, and I noticed that there were electric scooters all over the place, in all the major conurbations in China all those years ago, and just decided that that was going to be a market that needed to be exploited in some way. So my EV journey started with scooters and motorbikes in 2001 in the southeast corner of China.
So where do you think the next big developments are going to be in the sector of EVs?
Well, where are we now? I think the next big thing in the sector, I suspect, will be the continued increase in power intake that the cars will be able to take, such that we'll be able to charge the cars much faster, or any vehicles for that matter, much faster than we do today. So I don't think we're far away from having the ability to put 200 or 300 miles in a car in 10 minutes. That won't be that far away. And I think when that starts to happen, I think that will help with the proliferation of EVs generally in the market. Yeah,
well, that would make it no different to a petrol or diesel car of the past.
Exactly.
So on that subject, there's still a lot of talk that people have about hydrogen and synthetic fuels. Do you see that having a future, and if so, where will that be used?
Yeah, I get asked about hydrogen on an almost daily basis, and it would be remiss of anyone to poo-poo any technology completely, I suppose, because you never know what's going to happen, and there are always niches in different marketplaces. But I really don't see hydrogen as a alternative in the transport sector on the roads. There's possibly an argument for it in maritime or aerospace, maybe, but and trains, of course, maybe even buses. Actually, I suppose buses might be something whereby there might be an ability to use that sort of very metronomic, organised process in order to make hydrogen fuel cell work. But it's such an inefficient energy use and such an expensive infrastructure and such expensive vehicles. I can't see that changing anytime soon. Yeah,
I suppose with the bus sector as well, you've got two distinct areas. So you've got the service buses, which are likely to be electric because they're short, predictable runs. But then I guess you've got coaches which could go anywhere where that might be a factor.
Yeah, and I think from the coach world, it would be the same as the truck world, because that inability to know exactly where you're going to be, and the infrastructure needs to be everywhere, and it needs to be everywhere in order to make that a viable alternative. It's just not going to happen, and certainly not in a time frame that is required for the efforts we've got to make to reverse the global warming. So battery electric is definitely the way forward, and it's technology that we've got now in every 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 8 wheels. We've got the technology out on the road working every day. We've just got to increase it now. So that's definitely the future for me.
So what would you say is your proudest achievement in the EV sector?
Oh, that's a very tough question, because I've done quite a lot of things. My proudest achievement, gosh, I mean, obviously the Guinness World Record that we did together, Kev, is a great...
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one, and I'd love to do more. Yeah, founding a last mile delivery company and then building the largest fully electric fleet in the country is pretty cool. Picked up a few gongs with British Entrepreneur Awards and things like that over the years, and most recently, I suppose, the motor transport #1, what was it, Power Player, that's it, in the transport sector is pretty cool. It's nice to be #1 on any list, so that's very recent. But yeah, I don't think I could really mention one. There's just a few things which I've been very lucky to have achieved over the years.
And now you've been driving the Mach E for a bit to get used to it and stuff. So what do you think of it? I know you're a big Tesla fan, but what do you think of Ford's kind of EV equivalent to that?
Yeah, I mean, you are right. I'm a big Tesla fan. I love the simplicity of them. and the fact that it's a ground up EV, and as is this, right? And I'm pleasantly surprised. It is a very comfortable car. When we talked about the seats earlier, that there's little things these days in terms of EVs, but that makes a difference. The screen is great. I'm getting used to it being portrait, not landscape like a Tesla, but the principle's the same. There isn't a huge abundance of buttons everywhere, which I've always been a bit of a bugbear of mine with the traditional legacy-driven OEMs.
But it has got an indicator stalk. Well, some of the newer
I haven't driven the new Teslas without the indicator stalk yet, and I don't like the sound of it, I must be honest. But I do believe you can have aftermarket ones installed, so I think that's something I would do. But yeah, no, it's very comfortable. Its range is excellent. It's hard to fault really so far, and I've only been driving for an hour or so, but it's very, very pleasurable. So yeah, I am impressed.
So back onto the charging infrastructure, because obviously you're big into the charging infrastructure, being Chief Vehicle Officer at Gridserve. For those of you, the people who don't have the ability to charge it at home, do you think there is a solution for them where we can get much closer price parity for charging at home, so it's not, so EVs don't end up getting seen as for those who are more wealthy that have driveways?
Yeah, I mean, using the word parity, I don't think we're ever going to see price parity with the domestic rates, right? So public charging is always going to be more expensive. The difficulty we've got at the moment is the disparity is too great. And there's good reasons for that. Tax implications with VAT is one reason. The fact that all of the charge point operators like Gridserve are investing billions of pounds in infrastructure, and that's not for free. That we need to claim that money back. And it's a huge infrastructure that's being built for the first time. And as you well know with your work, it's an expensive exercise, and we're doing it across the entire country. But hopefully, with different bits of legislation, perhaps recognising this, and maybe different tax incentives with the VAT element for consumers, decoupling energy prices with electric prices with gas and oil would be useful, such that we're able to generate more and more renewable energy and get it into the network at a lower price, which hopefully will bring that disparity down between domestic and public.
So what do you see the EV market looking like in the next 5 years for cars and just infrastructure as a whole?
Well, I've got a pretty good idea of what the infrastructure is going to look like, I think, because I'm pretty close to that. The uptake of EVs is going to continually go exponential. We know that, and the ban on petrol and diesel cars will help accelerate that. But yeah, I guess it's all about the angle of the curve and how quickly that's going to happen. But just driving around London or driving around generally, I'm seeing so many more EVs on the road, and I just think it's going to continue to go that way. And it's quite exciting, really. There's lots of negative press, as you well know, as well as I do. But the general theme is that the EV transition is happening, and it's quite an exciting time.
Do you think that negative press is going to kind of encourage the government to push back their ZEV targets, or do you think it is just negative press and it will continue as normal?
I think last year was almost worse than this year. This year's getting a bit farcical with some of the news articles that are seeing cars getting written off because of rain, and only to find out it's an electric gearbox in a second-hand diesel car, or a car fire in Luton, which was blamed to be electric, but of course it was a Range Rover. So I think there's lots of sort of more farcical stories coming out now. So I just get the feeling that there's a bit more struggle from the media outlets to try and poo-poo EVs, and people are starting to get wiser to how these things really operate and how they really work. And the more and more that happens, I think the more the media will struggle to try and sell that disinformation or misinformation that we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah. So do you see the range of EVs kind of peaking and things like efficiency, well, like we do with the records, will come to the fore? Because it's all very well, I think, putting a really big battery in something, but there's got to be a point where you say, when you look at the States and see Hummer EVs with over 200 kilowatt hour batteries, I mean, is there a point where we should start saying enough's enough for battery size? Yeah,
I think so, and I think that what we do need to do as an industry, and what I think we're all obligated to try and help with, is understand and educate and make people aware of some of the key components of what of how EVs operate and how they work. They are simple things, but ultimately we're all familiar with miles per gallon, and miles per kilowatt hour is the same logic, right? It's an efficiency metric. And if you've got a Hummer with 200 kilowatt hour, huge battery, but horribly inefficient, then that miles per kilowatt hour is a really important number, because it's just as important as miles per gallon is in an internal combustion engine car. So little things like that people will recognise that it's not just about how big the battery pack is, but how efficient it is. And we combine both those things together with more, with bigger batteries, perhaps denser and lighter in the future, combined with more efficient vehicles. It's not going to be far or long before we've got 400-500 mile ranges, which is more than enough to cater for 99% of everyone's journeys, and even the 1% that it doesn't cater for in that very, very unique use case. There's so much more public charging now to be able to facilitate that one in a year long trip. So we're getting there.
Well, that's kind of what we proved with the record, the fact that we took it off a van which had 170 kilowatt hour battery, and we did that with a 68 kilowatt hour battery, kind of showing that you can do more with less.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about that record that we did, Kev, I think, in my mind, is that we and that's the way I often describe it to people, is we broke a record by over 50 miles in a vehicle with half the battery size of the previous record holder, and that's a material difference, and therefore that highlights just how much efficiency is important.
Yeah, and that was important that we did it as well. We were doing it at urban delivery speed to use the use cases of that type of vehicle.
Yeah.
So, got one more question for you, actually.
All right.
So, if money was no object, what would be your dream car?
If money was no object, I think my dream car would be, well, can I have two answers? Am I allowed two?
Go on, then you can have two.
Well, okay, so the real world answer is the car that I've already got, which is Tesla Model Y, because it ticks all the boxes for me, with a young family and decent range, performance, functionality. I just love it. But the one thing that is on my bucket list that I always want to do is to take an AC Cobra and convert that to an electric equivalent, which I know lots of people have done, but that's my dream car, and I'll probably call it a DC Cobra, I think, just for fun. But that's what I'd love to be able to do, take all the technology out of a Tesla or a Ford or something like that, and apply it to something vintage like an AC Cobra. That would be my dream car.
So I haven't quite sold you on the Mustang Mach E instead of your Model Y yet.
Well, a little bit of work to go on that one, but I am impressed. It is a lovely car.
Yeah. Right, thanks for spending the time with me, and been great being able to ask you a few questions.